Welcome to Awake to Oneness Radio. I am Caroline Chang, your host. The mission of Awake to Oneness Radio is to inspire the world to awaken to the universal truth of oneness. Science is now teaching us that all life is interconnected, meaning that we are all one. And spirituality and ancient wisdom has been teaching the truth of universal oneness for eons. So what you do to another person, you're literally doing to another aspect of yourself. And when mankind awakens to the universal truth of oneness, there will be peace on earth. Today's show topic is EVP with Sheri Perl. Sheri has been a guest on my show before. This is actually her third time with us. Welcome, Sheri, to Awake to Oneness Radio.
Thank you so much, Caroline.
Yes.
Are you ready for me to begin? Take it away, Pearl.
Yes, take it away, Pearl, please. Let the audience know a little bit about your history and who you are, and please explain to them what EVP is. I know some people are saying, what is this?
Sam hell is EVP?
Yes, exactly.
Elephants voted for peace.
Yes.
Okay, no, I will certainly do all of that. And
Yes.
first I want to thank you, Caroline, for having me again on your show. I'm honored to be here. And I hope what I have to say will brighten some people's day and get some thinking going. I started out with spirituality when I was 20 years old. I am now going on 67. So as you know, that's a lot of time to be in this field. I was the biggest non-believer in the world for the first 17 years of my life, and believed if you could not see something, it was not real.
Okay.
And if the kind of things that I will be talking about today, I used to think that people who believed in them were either deluded or probably stupid, but I just did not think that anyone in the right mind would think or teach about what is the center of my life now. But reality got in the way of my small mind way of thinking and showed me a much bigger picture. And I'll give a brief history. When I was 16, I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease. Some of your listeners may know it's a very debilitating inflammatory bowel disease that causes much pain and discomfort. And at the time, as you all know, I believed in nothing alternative, not even health foods. So my doctors put me on medications, and after a year of it being treated that way only, things were much, much worse. After a year of Crohn's, an old friend of my dad's, who was British, was visiting, and he saw that I was getting worse. So he decided to go for broke and tell me about a man in England named Harry Edwards, who was a spiritual healer. And at the time, I thought I knew everything. And I said, bull. You know, nobody in England is going to tweak their nose like in Bewitched, you know.
Yes.
And I'm going to get well.
Yes.
So I refused to take him up on the information. And another year went by. My senior year of high school, turned 1969 in the new year in January. It was the hardest year I have ever lived. And that's probably even harder than when my son passed. So you can just imagine the disease progressed to a point where I could not chew a piece of gum without getting pain. And then I began to hemorrhage. And then I was rushed to the hospital and given blood transfusions. And eventually they took out all of my colon and they reconstructed my bowels. And
wow.
At the time even, and I was 18, I had a temporary ileostomy. I don't know if your listeners know what that is, but it's a hard adjustment for anyone. But an 18-year-old girl, you have to wear an appliance on your abdomen for the collection of waste materials. I was pretty horrified. And these were the free love years, mind you. So this was very upsetting. But I ended up marrying my high school boyfriend at the time. And I was trying to get my life back together when I began to feel quite ill again, not from the Crohn's, but just very, very weak. And it turned out that I was infected with the hepatitis C virus in all the blood transfusions given to me for the Crohn's hemorrhages. So when we found out that I had the chronic form, and back in 1970, they had no treatments and no way of handling this, the doctors told my parents to give money to research and hope that medicine would come up with a cure. Otherwise, they did not even think I'd live another 10 years. And at the time, my mom had handed me a book to read called The Search for Bridie Murphy. And it was about a person who'd been hypnotized and remembered the life in Ireland where they were Bridie Murphy. And that started me thinking. And then the book spoke of Edgar Cayce. So I started reading the Cayce books. And I was very taken by one story in which Cayce was brought in on a case where a young girl started acting very insane. And the doctors suggested that the parents institutionalize the girl. And the parents couldn't bear that thought, so they went to Cayce. And Cayce did what he would do, which was he was called the sleeping prophet. He would go into a trance state, almost a sleeping state, and he could prescribe cures and make diagnoses. And I remember thinking how, amazing it was. But in the meantime, Cayce went into trance and he saw that the girl had a wisdom tooth impinging on a nerve in her brain.
Okay.
He told the parents if they would extract the tooth, the child would be well. And I was excited when I read that this was done and the child recovered, and something hit me. And I started to analyze it, and I thought, well, I didn't think that man in England could get energy to me in the States, but how did Cayce see into the girl's mouth? Part of Cayce had to be mobile, because we all know that Cayce was taking a nap or whatever it was he did.
Right.
And when it hit me that for him to see into the girl's mouth, a portion of his being had to be mobile, the memory, seemingly from out of nowhere, came into my mind about this man in England. And this was not a faith healing. It wasn't the type of healing because I believed, because I didn't believe in anything, but I was desperate and I had nothing to lose.
Right.
So I contacted my dad's friend, and they told me the man was Harry Edwards. And they gave us the information, and my dad, who had an office in England, offered to hand deliver a letter I wrote to Mr. Edwards, which he did. To the day he passed, he teased me about all of this, but he did hand deliver the letter anyway. And so he saw Mr. Edwards on a Thursday. And the next night, Friday night, he had not come back yet from Britain. I had read no books on the subject. I had never even heard of spiritual healing. And the next night, I had so much energy, I was flying.
Wow.
And then 2 weeks later, I went for my monthly blood tests, which I had had every month from, all year, and there'd never been any change. And the doctors told me it's jumped a third of the way towards normal. So at this point, I started reading. I got all Mr. Edwards' books. That was my first reading. And he explained that he did not work alone, that he worked with a team of spirit doctors who had been doctors in a previous life and now in spirit still had concern for those on the earth that were suffering, and that it was the spirit doctors that would carry out the healing, that he was more or less the messenger. So I was looking all over, looking up in the corners, looking for these spirits. To this day, I've not yet seen an apparition.
Right.
But I knew that something I could not see, feel, or touch had lifted me and brought me energy in ways that countless vitamin B12 shots never did. And that was the start of it for me. That was 1971. I was 21. 20 years old, not 20, 20 years old. And I began to get well. And from that point on, I became a student of everything I could get my hands on, with an emphasis on spiritual healing and mediumship, which fascinated me.
Yes.
If there were spirits, could we talk to them?
Yes.
And in the 1970s, in 1974, I ended up in the home of Jane Roberts, who was the medium who spoke for Seth.
Yes.
And Seth wrote, he comes to my EVPs now, he advises me. But Seth wrote many, many wonderful books through Jane. And as a regular ESP student, I got to experience a spirit taking over the medium's consciousness and talking directly to us. So I now knew that this was all very real. Yes. And it became just part of how I lived. My husband and I adopted 3 children. They, each at a different time when they were babies. So I was involved with raising my children and studying spirituality. And it must have been in 1999 when I went to Glenn Dove, who's a wonderful medium who I sat with for years. And it was he who told me that someone named Harry was around me and wanted me to know that I could do what he did. So at that point, I started my own distant prayer circle in which people could contact me with their problems, and I would do my own meditation and try to send the message to those in spirit, never really knowing if we got through. But when the results were wonderful, we were happy. And that's how it went. And my life went on where I taught about healing. I took patients. I did whatever I could to spread that information. And then my son Daniel passed of an overdose in 2008. So naturally, my work became more involved with bereavement. And I formed the prayer registry. And anyone that's listening who is a bereaved parent, this is a free service for all bereaved parents in which each child who passed has his or her name printed on the prayer registry calendar on their passing date. And every year on their passing date, mass prayer is directed to that child as well as their loved ones. So that was as far as it had gotten. Now, prior to Danny's passing in 2006, I was in Canada at a conference where
one thing I wanted to share with the listeners, Sheri, is that your Danny and my Kyle transitioned on the same date.
I know.
Not the same day, different year.
Not the same year.
But Danny was
July 1.
Yes, July 1. And Danny was 2008 and Kyle was 2014. But the same day. Yes.
Definitely. And doesn't the hot weather coming in sometimes give you the creeps? This is muscle memory or something.
Yes.
But I had been in Canada in 2006 at a conference, and Mark Macy spoke about ITC, instrumental transcommunication, of which EVP is the voice aspect of it. There's bringing through images. There's many ways to practice ITC. And I will admit I was intrigued at that time, but I was busy with the business of raising children. And I will admit it scared me a little, because Hollywood's done a number on all of us and taught us to think that what we're going to do is connect up with Satan and his helpers. And hey, I just got an email from someone yesterday warning me to stop because he said he himself did it for a while and started getting scratches on his arms. And, you know, I don't doubt there's a dark side, but, you know, when you're
everything, it's energy. So it's all about trying to raise your vibration, because if your vibration is high, the spirits that you encounter will be high. So it's all about vibration. Yes.
Right. I'm sure that's true. Yes. So I didn't get started right away, but somewhere around 2014, I managed to find the video Calling Earth. And also to the listeners, if you have not seen Dan Drazen's documentary, Calling Earth.
And I think it's on YouTube, correct?
It was. I believe now it's just on Vimeo. But I do have a link to it if people want to contact me. But it is spectacularly done. And I watched it, and I got very intrigued by a group called The Big Circle, which were children and parents communicating through electronic voice phenomenon.
Yes.
And I will explain what that is in a minute. At the time, I contacted some people through that, and I was told that at that time they were not recording, and that they really couldn't help me at that time. So I kind of let it drop. And then in 2016, I did a radio interview with Roberta Grimes, and to my good fortune, the most wonderful EVP researcher, Vicki Talbot, was listening to the show, and she contacted me to register her son Braden for prayer. And we got to talking, and the next thing I knew, I was gung-ho to try this EVP. Now, EVP stands for Electronic Voice Phenomenon, and it is a way that we can use technology to augment voices from spirit and hear them. Actually, all we do, I mean, it's not rocket science on our end. All we do is play a background sound and record it. What makes this so phenomenal is that the spirits will come and do what we have no idea how to do, and that is they can use thought to change the sounds we play into audible words that we can hear. They can even translate language, and so if I use I'll play one for you in a little bit where I used a
Okay.
little boy named Lorenzo. I have a sound source from him speaking in Portuguese, and you'll hear, I speak in English. So the EVP come through with the intonation of the kind of sound source you play. It couldn't be
Wow.
otherwise,
Right.
but they're able to change it around. And so through Vicky, I got more confident that this was something I could do.
Yes, yes.
Then I went to the
Now,
website.
I just wanted to share with the listeners who may not know how I discovered EVP was by experiencing it. My first reading with a medium, Suzanne Giesman, my son Kyle came through, and we have his voice on tape. And that was the first time I never had heard of EVP,
Right.
had no idea about this stuff, but I experienced it firsthand.
Right. Well, similarly for Vicky Talbot,
Yes.
her son started coming through on a little phone she had going, Mom, pick up the phone. So in some cases, they instigate our getting started.
Yes.
In my case, I definitely instigated. And I went to the AREI, which is Afterlife Research and Education Institute
Yes.
website, where there were instructions, but I'm not that computer savvy and I couldn't quite get it down. So I hired a wonderful computer technician fella to come over and help me get my computer configured to record EVPs. For your listeners to know, I hired this same man to help me make a slideshow, which is now downloadable from my website for free for both PC and Mac users to learn how to configure their computers to record EVPs.
Well, thank you. You know I have to do that because, you know, I am computer savvy.
Well,
So
then
now
it'll be easy for you.
Yes.
You just download the slideshow and you'll be boom, boom, boom. But
yes,
you know,
yes.
for someone like myself, I would say, well, do I hit on this or do I hit on this? So we have arrows showing exactly what to hit on and a number of components that you need so that you know how to save a file, find it when you want it, isolate the parts you hear. That's all part of the slideshow and it's available to anyone.
You know, I will make sure that the link to that is in this video.
Right. Well, if you just give them SheriPerl.com.
Okay.
And then they go down the search list. The last thing on the line says the EVP line. And they just hit on that and there's all the instructions. And
awesome.
So I started doing it and I would play the sound and I'd ask a question and I'd quiet down and let the background sound play. And people will say to me, why do you play background sound? And it is because I have been taught spirit cannot make sound in our reality. They can influence sound. So in the beginning, I thought, well, if spirit wants to talk to me, I'm just running the recorder. And I completely flatlined because I needed to give them a sound source.
Okay.
I started out using only human vocal gibberish, which is human vocals chopped up so it makes no sense. And I do believe that using a human vocal gibberish, you have a more human sounding EVP. But many scientists in the field get mistrustful of human vocal gibberish because they think there might be a word in there still that you might mistake. And so I started experimenting with everything from water going down my bathtub drain to scratching my finger on the computer, to using things that are posted at another wonderful website your listeners may want to know about. It's called idigitalmedium.com.
Okay.
And there is a group of sound sources under something called live streams where you can get other types of sounds. One is called Spiritron. I'll play an example. And there's no human vocal in it. It's just kind of, and the spirits can do a great job with that, but Danny sounds like a little robot. If I'm doing a reading for a mom who's bereaved, I don't want to send her, I want to sound human. So I use all of them. But in the very beginning, I'd record, and I wasn't sure if I was hearing anything. And it was very helpful to have both Dr. Craig Hogan and Vicky Talbot willing to listen to my recordings because their ears were already trained.
Right.
And they write me back and go, don't you hear this over here? And after a while, my ear began to train and hear the EVPs. And it's become such a phenomenally fascinating thing that I do readings for other parents. We bring them in through the cell phone. Yes. I set the cell phone up by the computer. I run the sound source. They ask a question. Then we sit quietly for 10 seconds. Then they ask another. And then when I get a chance to go over the recording
Yes.
and listen to it, I can find the EVPs for them. It's important, though, when you download the slideshow that people understand it, that you need to have, and it's in the slideshow, a recording program, either Audacity, some people use WavePad, some people, there's many different ones, but the point is, if you don't put it into something like Audacity and you can't slow it down or isolate clips, you won't hear them anyway. For example, I mean, you might hear something, but if a child is saying, I love you, and you're listening to, I love you, it's mixed in. So once you learn how to use the recording program, you can highlight a tiny section, and that's how I do my readings. I highlight a tiny section at a time, and when I hear something I recognize, I expand the highlight until it goes back into gibberish, and there's my EVP. And so I was initially just doing EVP to contact those on the other side for those who were missing them. But in the last few months, I started experimenting with contacting people who were still living when they were sleeping. Then I tried it when they were waking. And I found that indeed any thinking consciousness can be contacted through this means. They do not need to be in spirit. The most exciting, well, it was upsetting at the time, but I have a little dog, had a little dog named Stephen, who was my companion for the last 15 years. And he had been ill and going through some problems for quite some time. Well over a year ago, my son Danny was coming through saying, you really ought to let Stephen go, let him out. And I kept saying, he's got to show me more signs that he's suffering. Where's the line between murder and mercy? So I kept him going, and Danny dropped it as if he knew I wasn't ready. And a few months ago, he started saying, Mom, get ready. Stephen's got to go. And a couple of months ago, he came down with a number of conditions on top of the heart condition he already had. Right. And I could tell he was suffering. But again, you sit there on the fence. Should I do this? And so I was really upset one night, and I got the bright idea to take my recording program, and set it up by Stephen. Stephen, because of this heart murmur, had a very heavy breathing. So I decided to record his breathing, all the while asking him, Stephen, what do you want me to do? And when I played it back, there were messages from Stephen that anyone who wants to hear can hear it. They're posted at my website, where he goes, I want my mom to let me go, and I love you, mother. And it was from a deep breathing kind of, and it has that quality. But he basically told me, Mom, let me go. So I made up my mind. I said, okay, sweetheart, I will. And the next day we went to the vet, and Stephen crossed to the other side. And a few days later, I'm not going to say that I don't ever have doubts. That dark night of the soul came on me, and I went back on and recorded with human gibberish, and I said, I'm really missing Stephen. Can anybody help me out and give me some information? And also posted in the same post at my site, you'll hear, trust me, he's fine. Yes. So, it's an amazing thing, because not only can we have conversations with our loved ones in spirit, but we can get information and from our pets, from things that we actually Sonia Rinaldi, whose methodology has very much influenced me. She's a wonderful EVP researcher who lives in Brazil. Right. She does a lot of work with nonverbal children, people in coma, autistic children, and they're able to come through and let you know what they need.
Well, I'm not sure.
Is that,
That's amazing. I'm not sure if you're aware that when Kyle came through, he also was carrying my dog, Coco.
I was, because I heard that bark.
That bark, it's so clear. That is more clear than anything on that recording is Coco's barking. And Coco's bark came in before Suzanne said, and Kyle is holding a white dog.
Oh, that's so great. It's so it's truly remarkable.
Yes.
I do believe that in the next 10 years, this is going to crack wide open. And more and more and more. It's not that this is new, because people started doing this in the 1920s. So we're looking at like 100 years. But it's new to be in the hands of lay people such as ourselves. It was mostly the scientists and researchers and people like us just didn't have our hands on this. Well, guess
Yes.
what? It's
Yes.
all changing. And
Yes.
if anyone wants to learn how to do it, I've made that available for both PC and Mac
Thank you.
users. Oh, it's a pleasure. I mean, I paid through the nose for it, but hell,
But
what's
thank
money
you.
for?
Yes.
What's money for? And
Yeah.
I also made a video that is at YouTube under Sheri Perl, EVP, I guess VID for video, and that
Okay.
demonstrates how to use the recording program Audacity. The slideshow helps you configure your computer
Right.
parts, and
Yeah.
then the video helps you learn how to start recording. And
I'm going to put both of those links to the
Great.
yes in
That'll
this
be
video.
super.
Yes.
That'll be super. So
Yes. Yes.
it's just a phenomenal thing, and it means that all things with consciousness do have thoughts. Our animals do have thoughts, and now we can communicate. So imagine if you have an animal that's not eating, and you don't know why, that you could set your system up and ask your animal, and very likely your animal will tell you what's going on.
Well, that's exactly why Coco came through in that reading. Coco transitioned in 2007, and I was just she had stopped eating, and I was just so heartbroken because I was
I
like,
understand.
I'm like, could I have done something? What could I have done? And so she came through. She definitely, when Kyle came through and Kyle was holding her, she came through to say, "Mommy, I'm okay. I am fine." And I transitioned, exactly when I was supposed to. There wasn't anything, she wanted to, because I felt, well, could I have done something? And she wanted to let me know, no, Ma, it's all good.
Of course. Of course,
Yes.
And it's so important, doing readings for the children and their parents. I find that the children want this as much as their parents do, because they want to put their parents' minds at rest, that they have not been erased from the universe, that they will see them again, that they still love them, that they're still theirs. And it's a beautiful thing. And this gives us, we can go to mediums, and I love mediums, and I think they're wonderful. But when you can hear it yourself, and a number of the people I've read for feel that they were able to hear their child speak in their own voice.
Yes.
And for a parent who's lost, for someone who's lost anyone, not just parents, spouses, best friends, to be able to sometimes hear their voice again, it's a miracle. It's an absolute miracle.
Oh, yes.
But, interestingly, I have all kinds of wild things going on since I started it. For example, one day I was texting on my phone with Vicki, and she's all the way out in Washington State. Here I am in New York.
Right.
And we both noticed a little icon show up that looked like someone had recorded something. So we played it back. I played it into Audacity, recorded it, and listened, and it said, "Seth, hello, Seth." And Seth had been my teacher.
Right.
So I realized that what I'm teaching people is how to set up the conditions on their own to initiate this, but that actually they can jump in on things. I was calling the hotel in Arizona prior to the AREI symposium because I was donating a laptop, and I wanted them to know to keep their eye open for it.
Right.
And I'm on the line with the fella in the hotel, and we just keep getting interference, and he's getting angry. And it took 2 times of hearing the interference for the genius here to realize, could be Dan. So I ran and threw on Audacity, and it happened again. And when I played it back, it wasn't what we call an AEVP, but it was definitely there. And it said, "We're bringing you all together," which I guess related to the conference.
Right.
So what I'm finding is that they can jump onto phone calls. If you get a whole bunch of voice messages, and if you have the recording program set up in your computer, I hit play and I record what's there before the person or the often recording starts yapping. And I play that back and I get, "Mom, it's Dan." Wow. So I'm finding that if there's an open line of different types, they jump on. Wow. And I don't know how they do that, but they do. They know how to do it.
Yes.
And it's really a fun adventure. It's the most fun I've had in my work in a long time because, it's just phenomenal. All of a sudden someone shows up and, they'll say, "Oh, Johnny Harris is here." And that was like a high school boyfriend who died of an overdose way back. So you just don't know who's going to come through.
Right.
And it's absolutely marvelous. I caution people, though, because the other thing that I think people should be made aware of is that It is an open line. And I have no worries about Satan. That's not my concern. But there are people who might want to play a joke. And interestingly, what brought me to see this was one night I made a recording. In the morning when I woke up, I decided to listen to it. And the first thing I heard was Will Ferrell. So I went to Google and I Googled Will Ferrell, and it said there'd been a death hoax on him that month, but that he was alive and well. And I thought, Then the following month, I get the name Jon Voight. So I Googled Jon Voight, and it says the same thing, that month there had been a death hoax on Jon Voight, but that he was alive and well. Now, were the kids trying to tell me about the death hoax? Was somebody just playing around with me? So when people go on and say, well, I know I'm talking to Mother Mary, I say, well, you know, I've gotten so many names. Mussolini. Was it Mussolini or someone yelling Mussolini? I mean, you have to keep your common sense always with all the spiritual stuff, because you got to keep your I call it common sense spirituality. You know, if you get a voice that tells you to jump off the Brooklyn Bridge, you're not going to do it. So you have to be aware, not that necessarily evil entities are going to be out for you, but playful entities might be. And so just be aware. If something doesn't make sense, discard it. You know, if the shoe doesn't fit, don't wear it. For me, all of this beautiful scientific proof that our spirits, our loved ones, whether it be our children or our husband or our spouse or our friends, are not gone. Our parents are not gone. Right. They're always with us. And that's so, to me, I think for anyone, and I never, ever, ever describe myself as a grieving parent, never, because I've never grieved, not one moment. And because I knew even as he was transitioning that it was his soul's time, and it was a soul plan that he and I made together before this incarnation, and that he's not gone. He's not going anywhere. I can't see him physically, and I can't fuss at him to take out the garbage and clean up his room anymore. But he's not gone. He's with me all the time. And I feel his presence more now that he's in spirit, because he is with me all the time now that he's in spirit, than I did when he was here, when he was, he was a grown man. He lived his own life. I would see Kyle when he was not living at home, which he only lived at home the last 2 to 3 years of his life. But before that, he was living on his own. When he was living on his own, I get a call for my birthday, for Mother's Day, it's like, and he wasn't, but he lives 45 minutes away, but it was like he was living his life. So I do understand what you're saying, but I will say I did grieve just for the physical body, just for the physical presence and the jokes that always came along with Danny. That, I think that we just miss that physical part. Oh, yes. But it's very important then that we learn to expand our perspective, to incorporate the reality that includes both what we can see and what we can't see. Exactly. For so many people, if they can't see it, and it's not our fault, we were raised to believe that if we can't see it, it's not real. So it takes some unlearning. And until you can do that, you may be in a state of grief, because your only way of experiencing a reality of someone is to see them and hear them. Yes, I love that word you use, unlearn, because I went to a conference. Yes, it's so much unlearning, and it's society, it's religion, it's school, it's society, it's parents, it's the media. It's the powers that be. But it really started with Sir Isaac Newton, who was considered one of the finest scientists ever to live, and he defined the world and said there was an inside world and an outside world. No problem with that. But the mistake I feel he made, and I feel has hurt science and all of us as a result, is he said the only thing that was real was the outside world. And anything that could not be measured or weighed was not real. And so the world began to believe the only thing that mattered was matter. And so that's a big disservice. Yes. Yes, so that's a hurdle for people to get over. They've got to realize that that everything you see is interpenetrated with spirit, and that we've got it backwards. We think of things like mountains and steel and metal as real. The human, the physical body, that's solid, but that's what's perishable. That which we can't see, the spirit that interpenetrates it, that's what's permanent. But until you shift to a reality in which the non-physical has value to you, you feel you've lost everything. So I encourage people to read and get more and more and more knowledgeable about the unseen reality, because not only is that where their loved one is if they're grieving a loved one, but it's where they will be too.
Right.
And it always blows my mind that people know more about going to Europe or going to France than they do about going into spirit.
Yeah.
But going on a trip is optional and death is not optional. So why aren't people just want to know what will happen to me and what do I need to know? Is there something I should do to prepare? To me, it's just logical to want to know.
Well, for me, I always say I never use another word I don't use is death. Don't use bereavement. I don't use death because to me, it's all eternal life. It's a transition.
Right.
And the one of the things though, and I was thinking of this just earlier today before we came together for this interview, I was thinking about the greatest thing I was ever taught in school in 7th grade. In 7th grade, my science teacher said when we were studying molecules and atoms, I'll never forget it when he said it, there is nothing truly solid. Like you were just saying, people always, but science, and this is hardcore, regular science I'm talking about, knows that if you put anything under a high-powered microscope, what do you see?
Activity.
You see all these moving particles, and they're not even those little tiny particles are not even touching each other. So he's teaching about molecules and atoms. He's teaching us nothing is truly solid. It appears solid to us, like this table appears solid. It's not.
Exactly.
So but that's stuck with me when he said that.
Well, you were fortunate to hear that in 7th grade. Didn't get to me till I was nearly.
But yes. So, but that tells us that things are not as they appear.
Absolutely true. Absolutely true.
Yes.
Now, I'm wondering if I could play a few clips to demonstrate, but won't I need to pull out the earphones so you can hear it through the computer?
Sure. Yes.
So I'm going to pull this out for a minute.
Okay.
You can still hear me, right?
Yes, I can.
So
yes, I can.
Play one here. I want to play. This one blows my mind. This was an EVP recorded using Portuguese language.
Okay.
It was Lorenzo, and I had asked my son, if I use this foreign language, can you speak to me in English? And let me play this.
I speak in English.
I love that. Oh my goodness.
Now, it has the intonations of this little boy because needless to say, the sound, it will have the sound intonations of the kind of sound source you use, but those words are very clear.
Yes.
Now, I'm going to play you something. I hope that our listeners will hear this. This was made using a sound source that I downloaded from the iDigital Medium website. It's called Spirutron C. It was created by a man named Ron Rees. And I hear I love you. So let's see if you can hear it.
Okay, awesome.
Actually, it's I love you, mommy.
Okay. Yes.
Now here's a really good one. This was using human vocal gibberish. I say, Danny, can you say I love you, Ma? And you'll hear, I love you, Ma. Let me hit that one.
Danny, can you say I love you, Ma?
Yes.
Now, of course, you hear the gibberish running in the background.
Yes.
I'll do it again. I want the listeners to see you run the soundtrack the whole time.
Danny, can you say I love you, Ma?
I love you, Ma.
Yeah.
So it's quite interesting. Now, this is very interesting. It was late at night, and I was trying a new thing of just using my finger to scratch. And Danny said, get to bed now. He used to love to boss me around. But this was made not using a soundtrack. This was made using what I call finger scratch. Ready?
Okay. Yes. Well, I have to share something with you too about my EVP with Kyle. One of the things he said was saying through Suzanne was, I'm working and at that time I was really working too hard. And he was like, Ma, take a break, put your feet up and relax and watch a movie. Yes, he's just telling me, Ma, you're working too hard. He's like,
actually,
Ma.
last night, Danny said to me too, this is ridiculous. Put on a movie.
Yes, no, he said twice. He said, put on a movie, relax, put on a movie, and chill and watch a movie. He did. He told me that twice. Yes.
That's incredible.
Yes.
So, and what the other thing I've seen which really blows my mind is that we all know that time does not exist on the other realms.
Right.
And very often now what I'm finding is I'll make a recording one day and I'm auditing it maybe 2 days later. And for example, I had to make a deposit at the bank and I recorded on a Monday and I was going Wednesday afternoon and I'm playing this reading back just before I'm about to leave and Danny says, go make your deposit. But how did he know that I would be, and then Josh, who's the fellow who helped make the slideshow, yes. I did a reading for a woman on a Monday. He was coming on Thursday. I was finishing the auditing when the bell rang, and as I'm walking to the front door with my computer, and I hit on the last colored bleep on the screen, and it says, your Josh is here. Mm. He and I both jumped 2 feet.
Wow.
And it wasn't as if I just made the recording either. I made that recording 3 days prior to that. So you begin to see that once we get proficient at this, my son says, when you begin to trust me, I can tell you everything. Because he knows he'll tell me something and I'll be like, no.
Right.
Here's one. A couple, a father, I did a reading for this couple, and you'll hear the father say, Alexandria, are you happy? And you'll hear him say, all of the time. Let me tell you.
Alexandria, are you happy?
Could you hear that? All
yes.
Of the time?
Oh,
so,
yeah.
I'll play that part again.
Yes.
All of the time. Try it again. Let me get that back there again. All of the time. Could you hear that? All of the time?
Yes.
So, you know, it's a phenomenal thing. And now the ways to do this is for free at SheriPerl.com. And, you know, you can just SheriPerl.com and then go down to the EVP line. Now, what's really cool is the first thing in the search list is the prayer registry, which will show people the calendars with the children's names. The second thing is the prayer registry photo gallery, which has pictures, photos of the kids. The third thing, I might mix them up, is the prayer site where there's a written and audio prayer every day for the children. And then the fourth thing is what's called the prayer registry forum. And that's where I post EVP clips that I've gotten. And that's where you'll hear this. The last post I put on is Stephen, my dog. And you can go on in here and say, I want my mom to let me go. And one woman who heard it wrote on Facebook, sounds like a dog would sound like if a dog could talk.
Yeah.
Cute.
Yes.
But that's what EVP is. It's electronic voice phenomenon. It's a phenomenon in which we can use electronics to give them voice. Yes. And as I said, you know, I was so in the beginning nervous, like, oh my God, you know, I'm not that proficient at the computer, but our end is definitely not rocket science. We play sound, we record sound. Wow. If spirit didn't come and do what they do, we would be playing back the same sound we recorded, a bunch of gibberish. But when you get, I love you, Ma, you know that that they are working with us, because we on our own don't even begin to know how to do that. Yes. So that's why when people say, you know, is it hard to learn? No, it's not hard to learn, but you know, if they think that you're just doing it as a parlor game at a party, they may not want to come forward, you know. I mean, spirit knows me. I'll work as hard as I can. I'll help as many people as I can. I'm not charging them for this. So I find that I've got a real open channel, because they have purposes too over there. Right. Just to entertain us.
It is
true. If I'm really upset, I can go on and they will hold my hand forever. They have enormous patience, but they want to get the point across. Yes. Death is not the end, that we go on into spirit. So everything we do here matters. And that's why I say, so be good for goodness sake, because it's not that there's any mandatory hell over there, but from my understanding, and I'm sure yours from all our reading, people who've had near-death experiences or have channeled from the other side, we do get this opportunity to have a life review. to look at every single thing we've done. And actually, one man who Raymond Moody spoke of at a conference said that he saw all the things he had done to others, but through the other's eyes.
Exactly. That's what I was just about to say, sweetie. That so goes back to oneness. Remember what I said at the very beginning?
Yes, of course.
What you do to another person, you're literally doing to yourself. So when you go on the other side and you have this review, you are feeling exactly what you did to that person. You're feeling exactly
what they experienced.
Exactly, because because you're one.
Back out of it, when he came out of the near death, he said it left him with such a sense of awesome responsibility because he understood. So many people think, well, nobody knows. I got away with it. There's none of that, and so you have to be the person you want to be. And I always say to people, when you're just too tired to be nice, go to bed and get the rest. Years ago, that's it, just go to bed.
Yeah.
You have to refuel. You have to replenish. Life is challenging on all of us. And in the world today, with 99% and 1%, with 99% of the people struggling while, corporations are getting richer and it's a hard world for people. I mean, it's been hard since the cave days, let's face it. Man's inhumanity, the man has never failed to deeply disturb me. But if we understood that it's not what you see, but what you don't see, that it doesn't matter if you're blue, purple, green, red, white, who freaking cares? If you're heavy, none of that matters. That's just the camouflage.
Yes.
What matters is what you can't see. And when people understand that we all go on and in the long run have to experience everything we've perpetrated on another, maybe they will think twice before they say certain things, do certain things. But certainly the way I look at us in our species as a bunch of kindergartners. I mean, kindergartners get angry and they're like, I don't like you, bam.
Yes.
I want it my way, boom. We get out the guns, we get out to me, it's like we don't need to be more intelligent. We need to be more wise. We need more spirituality in our lives. We've all learned how to read, write. They can put a man on the moon. They can transplant organs, but they can't feed everybody. And they can't stop killing each other over whose God is the God. Insanity. So why I think your work is so important, the message you try to bring in every single interview, whether it's EVP or some other totally end of the spectrum, is to get people to understand that we really are one spirit. We all grow. I look at it this way. I say to people, what's the difference between your fingers? Okay, one is shorter. One is fatter, one has a broken nail, one is a little bent, but they are basically all the same thing and they're all connected to the same base.
Yes.
And that's how I see us. We're all different, but we're all the same and we all need the same air, water, and conditions to keep life going. So it's time to just realize that and treat others as you want to be treated. And oddly enough, every single religion aspires to the golden rule.
Yes.
I had a poster years ago when I was doing coming of age ceremonies for teenagers, and I would give them this poster and it had every single symbol of every of the world's religions. And in one way or another, they all said, if you don't want it done to you, don't freaking do it. But they don't live that way. And more people have died in the name of God than any other reason. So I say, you know what, let's forget about teaching reading, writing, and arithmetic so much and have a class in every grade that asks, why are you alive? Who are you? What do you want? What matters? Because we have not, our souls have not been able to be educated as far as our brain. Yes. And as they say, the mind creates the abyss and the heart crosses it. We need more heart.
Yes. So true.
I would, finish off with that, and yes. I really want to thank you again.
Well, also, you and I are going to see. Well, we're going to see each other hopefully sooner than that because you're not far.
No.
I'm only an hour and a half from you, from New York City.
Anytime you want to come to a Helping Parents Heal meeting, we're having one on Sunday at 2 p.m. in my apartment. There'll be parents here. You're welcome.
Sunday? Okay. I might take you up on that because Sunday's a good day for me. But what I was going to say, we're also going to see each other at the first Helping Parents Heal conference in April. So that's so that's going to be amazing. So that's, yes, but definitely this Sunday, I'm
We
gonna.
have a lovely group coming, lovely group. And then I don't hold them through the winter when it's snowy. It's hard to get in. So this will be the first, the last in-person one till spring. So I'll send you all the information.
Please send me the information because I will be there. I have no plans for Sunday, and you're only an hour and a half away. So yes.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yes.
And in the meantime, to anyone watching, may I send my best wishes to all of you and let you know my door is open. If I can help anybody, you can contact me at SheriPerl@gmail.com.
That I was just gonna also give your websites again. You have
my website is just SheriPerl.com.
Okay.
And all that other stuff is there on the web. And there is also a free download on the if you get to my website, you'll see a little picture of me. Right below it, there's a book cover, which if you hit on, brings up the entire PDF, and it's the Grieving Parents Handbook, and it was written by myself and a whole bunch of women who are part of the prayer registry to help people, especially at the beginning, to deal with some of those terrible times, because we raised 3 questions. I think it was, why me? Is there something I could have done? And the last one is, how will I get through this? And what they did is they all sent me their heart, from the heart, little pieces on how they dealt with those kinds of questions. Why me? Or could I have done something? Did I do something wrong? Is it my fault? I think that's
right. Yes.
And it just reaches out a hand to you. You know, it's not one of these books where you need a dictionary to look up the words. It's just heart to heart from beautiful women who wanted to lend a hand to people. So anyone that wants to read it can just hit on it and it'll bring up the PDF. You can print it out or read it on your computer. Okay. But it's there for everybody, anybody that needs.
Thank you so much. Thank you. You do so much to help and to share, and it's like, I love the era we're living in, the computer age, where we can get together, we can do shows like this, and we can just share all this wonderful information and knowledge with the world.
It's amazing.
I'm
Thank you for doing such a great show and having me as your guest.
Well, thank you. And I will see you on Sunday. I will be there.
Send you all the information.
Yes, I'm so excited.
Great meeting with you there.
Thank you. Oh, I'm so excited. Okay, much love. All righty. Bye-bye.